Thanks for logging on for the preview show delivered by FedEx Racing. I'm Mark Fine, and this is it. Marty Snyder joining me again for the final time of this season. Good to see you, my friend. We ready for this final race?
Oh, I'm so excited, especially with the championship battle that we have, Mark. But I can't believe it's the last time we get to break bread this year. But we'll do it again very soon for the Daytona 500.
Yeah, the off season is short, but hey, let's enjoy this final. Kind of like the last day of school. You're excited about the summer, but you're going to miss your friends as well, right? Okay, let's talk about this race. We're going to start with the track in Homestead. It's gone through some different incarnations. Talk about where it's wound up, because a lot of folks really like the way this track runs.
Yeah, it's a fun racetrack. Drivers love this racetrack because of the variable banking. You can run all over the track, but it's a different mile and a half from any other mile and a half we have on the circuit. In fact, a completely different setup. I was talking to Mike Ford about this racetrack a couple of days ago, and he said, you can't take any racetrack and apply it to Homestead, really. He said the corners are different from any other racetrack. The straightaways are different. He said this is such a unique racetrack that Homestead is one of those rare tracks on the circuit, Mark, where it's really its own unique animal. You have to really be prepared for this track, and you can't apply another track to it.
Yeah, and, a lot of traditionalists, when they started running this race years ago in Homestead, the final race, weren't too crazy about it. It's really developed into something everybody loves. That said, obviously, it's Denny Hamlin's to lose, although there is a lot that's going to come into play this weekend. Let's hear from Hamlin and Jimmie Johnson about the race this weekend.
If you look at history, it looks good for us, but you never know what can happen. We just hope to have a clean race next week and the best car wins. And that's all that we can ask for to crown the champ. It's going to be tough. Those guys are going to be good. We see that every week. They're top five. As far as I'm concerned, it's going to take a win.
We're going to go home and we're going to make sure we have the best engines and go through our simulation stuff and go down and make sure our car is as fast as it can be, and then race. Last couple of weeks we've been good and they've been great, and we need to get that turned around and be great. If not, I know that with Chad on the box, we're going to work on a strategy and hopefully find an upper hand somewhere somehow. First goal is to have enough speed just to run away from them and not have to worry about it. But if not, you've got to back up the punt and figure out what to do from there.
All right, Marty. Well, we've heard from the drivers. Let's talk about it now. Three guys with a legitimate shot to win this championship going into the final race. I want to talk about two different aspects. We're going to talk about the mental side in a second, but first let's talk about what's going to go on the track and who you think has an advantage in terms of the car and the equipment.
Well, if you're just talking car and equipment, Mark, I think no doubt Denny Hamlin has had the speed lately to beat everybody. And Jimmie Johnson talked a lot about that, the pace on the racetrack. And certainly the 11 car has had that over the 48 by a bunch and over the 29 by a good bit, I would say. So if you're going to go speed only, I think this is Denny Hamlin's championship to lose. Won this race last year. Clearly they know the Homestead track very well, and they've been very good at the mile and a half too. You go back to the Texas win. So the 11 should have the speed. I think Kevin Harvick's going to be a little bit behind Denny Hamlin. I think they'll be very strong this weekend, but speed only. I think the 48 right now, we talked about this going into the chase. We said the mile and a half racetrack would be the 48 to Healy Field. So far it has been. They've not been quite at the speed with the 11 or the 29 and the 48. Now they're a little bit better on pit road, but they just don't have the speed the 11 does. I think if we're just going to base it on that, this should be Denny Hamlin's championship.
All right, now let's talk about the mental side of things. We know what went on with Hamlin last week. It's kind of like a guy who had 3 fumbles in a game. And I don't want to say that they fumbled, but by the same token, does that carry over to the next game? Is there a mental edge? And, of course, Jimmie Johnson's been there, done that. This guy's been through this so many times. So is there a mental edge for Jimmie going into this final race?
Oh, I think absolutely. I mean, so now if we're talking about the mental game, I think Jimmie Johnson has that advantage because, listen, I've talked to people with Hendrick Motorsports. I was at RCR yesterday. I was at Gibbs Racing yesterday. I can tell you the moods on each team very different. If you go to the 48 shop, they're all happy because they feel like pace-wise, speed-wise, they've not been able to keep up with the 11. They've had all the pit road problems, but they've been able to overcome all that to have a shot here in the final race. And this is all they wanted, was just a chance in this final race, and they certainly have that. But I think mentally, they certainly have the edge. The 29 is still the team that feels like they have nothing to lose because no one's expecting them to do well. I think Kevin Harvick could surprise people this weekend. I think he's going to be very fast on the track, and they're in the attitude of, you know what, let's go out and just throw all caution to the wind. Denny Hamlin and his team are in a very vulnerable position in terms of mentally because talking to those guys, they have put Phoenix behind them, but there's still the question mark. There's still the wonder. Are we going to be good enough? Are we going to be able to beat the 48? And you have to remember, last year, the biggest thing, and we've talked about this too, Denny let the 48 get in his head too much. He worried about where the 48 was way too much on the racetrack. This weekend, the focus from Joe Gibbs telling Denny Hamlin, you've got to worry about your car. That's it. Beat the 48, you win this championship.
All right. Now, that said, we also know the 48 has never really had to win this race, and a lot of folks say that's why he hasn't, because he didn't have to. So, you and I got to make picks now. I like Greg Biffle in the race. I like Denny Hamlin for the championship. Give me one of each from you.
That's a great point, by the way, about the 48. They've never had to race at Homestead, Mark, so we really don't know what they have. They've never had to go here and perform like they would need to win a championship. I like your Roush Racing pick. I think they're very strong. I like the momentum that they've had in the last few weeks. And I'm going to go with Carl Edwards. He's always run well at Homestead. I think he's my race winner. And for the championship winner, I'm going to stick with the speed. The one thing you hope for, Mark, is that they can race for the championship. No fuel mileage, no goofy wreck taking anyone out. If they race for it, Denny Hamlin wins this championship.
It's hard not to pick the car that's been better in recent weeks. Great stuff as always, Marty. It's been a fun season.
All right, bud. It's been a good year. Take care.
All right, and thank you for logging on for this final edition of the preview show delivered by FedEx Racing. We'll see you again next season.